As violence flares in Chicago, city officials and residents are yet again locking horns over a solution about how to stop it. One Chicago alderman, Anthony Beale from the far south side, is leading the charge on what sounds like a kind of common sense solution: permanently reassigning officers to the city's most gang-ravaged areas. But the proposal is generating huge blowback. Why? Over fears that it could generate a surge in crime and some of the safer districts of Chicago. But is this just another excuse to avoid badly needed radical solutions to stop this carnage? Joining us now to analyze is Horace Cooper, the co-chair of Project 21, along with Anthony Tall, a criminal defense attorney. Now, neither of you are with me in the studio, so we're going to have to deal with that. I wish you were here with me. But let's start with you, Anthony, because something has to be done in Chicago. The residents are crying out for solutions. This is one resident. We'll play her first. This is a young man. This is one resident today talking with Charlie Kirk. Let's watch.
He doesn't take care of certain parts of town as he should. They take care of downtown. They take care of the north side. The south and west sides are left.
He was young to me, but he said, look, you take care of these rich areas, but our areas aren't getting the help. So we have a lot of police being reassigned today through the weekend to these bad areas. But what about that idea of permanently reassigning officers to the worst of the worst areas? Why is that controversial?
Well, I think it's controversial.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's controversial, Laura, just because what we have in a lot of high police areas, or areas that are policed, particularly communities of African Americans and Hispanics, is we have over-policing, where a lot of the innocent people end up getting tagged or pulled aside or stopped unconstitutionally against their Fourth Amendment right. Remember, I've represented gang members in L.A. I've represented gang members who, and they have the whole community afraid of them. So what we don't need is police coming in doubling the fear if it's not going to be strategically placed and constitutional provisions are not going to be there. There's nothing wrong with the permanent policing, but it needs to be constitutional provisions to protect the 98% of the community that is not causing the trouble, and that 2 to 3% that are repeat offenders.
Yeah, the problem is that a small percentage of people are turning those areas upside down, and the carnage over the weekend was just unacceptable. Horace, you know, there is a great concern in the black community about aggressive policing that turns innocent people into feeling like criminals. And these comments are heartfelt. They're made. You hear them over and over and over again. Yet residents of the south and west sides of Chicago on camera over the last several days saying, we need help. So there's two competing views here. Where do you come down?
Look, these people are living literally in war zones. It is unbelievable that the conversation is being held that grandma can't go and get her prescription filled, that her granddaughter can't get to school without a drive-by shooting, that jobs won't locate in those communities, perpetuating poverty because investors will not go where there is this elevated level of crime. What you need is a common sense idea. The same thing that happens when you're on the interstate. When the officer puts his car prominently on the side of the road, all of a sudden everybody slows down. Even people who are law-abiding take notice. What we need to do is have an elevated presence of law enforcement in these communities. And it doesn't need to be for a weekend. It doesn't need to be for a few weeks. It needs to be a year, 2 or 3, if necessary. That's the way that you can make it safer, and that's the way that this war zone mentality can go away.
This is what Donald Trump... Yeah, hold on. We're going to play a soundbite from President Trump, and then you can react on the other side. This was today addressing issues such as prison reform. They even touched on sentencing reform, and he touched on Chicago. Let's watch.
We must strengthen community bonds with law enforcement, including cities like Chicago that have been an absolute and total disaster. 63 incidents last weekend and 12 deaths. That's bad stuff happening, and probably, I guess you have to take from the leadership. This go bad to leadership. There's no reason in a million years that something like that should be happening in Chicago.
Anthony, he's obviously dinging Rahm Emanuel's leadership in Chicago. Given your background and counseling, representing these former gangbangers and so forth, do you think Rahm Emanuel's done a good job?
No, I don't think. I think Rahm Emanuel has done a horrible job. But that's not really the point. The point is, I want to ask Horace, does he really think that with the statistics that we have, where African Americans are pulled over more without reasonable cause or without probable cause, or where they're arrested more often, or where they're sentenced harsher, with all of these hard statistics, do you really want a permanent police force there that's not strategic and that's not following Fourth Amendment rules? And what are you going to do to make sure that those rules are set, that Fourth Amendment reasonable standard that the founders put in there is being followed? I think that's very important.
You can hide behind the Fourth Amendment all you want. Here's the facts. Black Americans, particularly in Chicago, are dying as a result of the failure of law enforcement to be welcomed in and to let them play the role that they're capable of doing. Here's what needs to happen. What the mayor needs to do, what the governor of the state needs to do, is create a joint task force where they immediately allow for the state law enforcement officers to come in. They also need to work with the Department of Justice, and they allow for new prosecution teams to come in. You absolutely are going to have to start sweeps.
I mean, the goal. The goal, guys. Hold on.
Here's the problem with that.
Go ahead, real quick, and then we have to close. Go ahead.
Here's the problem with that. There's white people dying in Appalachia, in Kentucky. Why aren't you so concerned about them? They're dying by numbers. I tell you why. Because when the police come there, they're not going to be over-policed as much as African Americans and as much as Hispanics.
Hold on.
That is not false at all. Why aren't you concerned about them, Horace?
Hold on.
Why aren't you concerned about them? They're dying in numbers.
Yeah, Anthony, we're concerned about all people here on this show. But the Chicago murder rate is still unacceptably high. It's higher than New York. It's higher than Los Angeles.
Stratospheric.
It has to change. I think we all want that. We differ on how to get there, but we all want it to change. We don't want people pulled over unnecessarily. We don't want people's constitutional rights violated. Sometimes the police will probably pull someone over, and it won't be fair. I understand that happens, and that's terrible. But if you can save lives this weekend and every weekend in the summer and beyond with smarter policing, with smarter community involvement, maybe President Trump can, offer some solutions with other faith-based leaders. That's a good thing. And I think we all have to get out of our corners and come together and get back to basics. In all parts of the country where we're having problems, whether it's opioid, Chicago, Burlington, Vermont, where they have a huge drug trade, we got to get together as a country and solve this stuff, guys, because otherwise we're just going to keep losing Americans unnecessarily. Anthony.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I don't want the environment of police being there to create more criminals, incarcerate more people, and those people go back into the community and create more crime. That's what I want to safeguard against. There's nothing wrong with that.
Those talking points are killing people. There is a small number of people in these communities that are creating a nightmarish existence.
Yeah, guys,
those people need to be pulled out of the circumstance.
They got to be taken out of the community. They've got to be incarcerated, and that, if not, we're going to see kids on bicycles killed again, as we did last weekend.
Fair.
All right, guys, great segment. Thanks so much.